Okay, so this is a real quick primer on how to calculate your Z-scores, extra credit assignments with using jamovi to calculate the deviation scores and so forth. So just as a refresher, I'm going to first show you, this was my PowerPoint 5, which you have access to. Okay, you can actually look at the lecture. You should see my screen now, okay? This is how to calculate the standard deviation. So when we calculate the standard deviation of a sample, like you'd be doing to calculate your personal Z-score, we use this formula, right? We do not use the bias-corrected population standard deviation. So the reason you have to calculate the squared deviations, which is right here, okay, the sum of the squared deviations is right here. You need to calculate that so you can find the sample standard deviation. Jamovi gives you the population standard deviation, right? So you could do it by hand, or you could use Jamovi by first creating your deviation scores, which is just each score minus the mean, and then you square that to get your square deviation scores, and then you get your sum right here. And this part right here goes right here, right? So that's why you need to calculate it. Now I'm going to show you how to do this in Jamovi. This PowerPoint right here, as I said, you have access to it. It's just PowerPoint 5, Chapter 6, these scores a normal curve, right? You can actually look at the PDF and see that. So let's look at Jamovi doing this really quickly. Okay, so these are not your grades. These are somebody else's grades. So when I give you, this is a different class, a prior class. So when I give you the file, okay, let's get rid of this. I just give you the grade. So grade or grade 1, whatever it is. And so what you need to do is first calculate the deviation from the mean for each score. Usually you just have to calculate your score for extra credit. So say your score is 320, you can do everybody because it's easier that way. But you're really interested in yours, right? So to calculate the deviation, you would just go compute variable, and then you need to do each. So we already have, we'll call it, let's see, B deviations. I've already done it, but I'm going to show you deviation 2, okay? And then you just want to do, we just have to do grade 1. So that's the scores minus the mean of grade 1. And to get that mean, you will have already run descriptive statistics, right? And you see the mean right there, right? Okay, so let's get rid of that. Go back to here, minus 269.48, and you just hit enter. Okay, and let's get rid of the, and you'll see this is the one I just created, right? I showed you how to create. I already did this before over here. But I did over here so you could see it. And it depends how many, like here I use 3 decimals, which I advise you to do. That's why you have 3 decimals here. Here I did not, because I just didn't feel like it, right? Okay, so first you do that, right? And then you have to do the squared deviation, which is just you multiply whatever you did twice. So if I just did this one. If I want to I do compute. We'll do squared deviation 2, and we go down here and just do deviation, the one we just created. Remember, it's case sensitive. Deviation 2 times deviation 2. Hit enter, and we get that new variable. I want you guys to look at this. So this is the one I created this one. And I only used 2 decimal places, and then I did a square, and that's what it came. So the difference between using 2 and 3 is quite a big difference. So I always counsel you to use 3 or 4 decimal points until your final answer, and then you give me however many you want. Okay, so we just created. So if we want the sum of the square deviations, which we need if you want to calculate your sample standard deviation, all we have to do is go to analyses. Descriptives, and we just made this one, right? Put it in here. Okay. Jamovi doesn't automatically give you the sum, so you ask it for it, like I've told you before. And right here, you get the sum of the squared deviation. So this is equal 2 minus mean of x squared, okay? Which is on the top of your standard deviation calculation. So for the standard deviation, if you want to then calculate it, you can do it from there. So remember, the standard deviation is actually the square root of this divided by n, right? So that's what you need if you need your actual z-score or your standard deviation, right? So you can then keep going. Okay. Let's go back and let me do a new share for a second just to remind you guys. Again, this is in my, how come I can't see my PowerPoint? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay. So this was just calculating the standard deviation, z-scores here. Okay. Right here, I want to call your attention to z-score for a single score and a sample. So this is what you need to calculate for your extra credit to get your personal z-score. This is the sample standard deviation, okay? So you're already calculating this, but you need the sample standard deviation. So for that, go back here, and we have to calculate this, and Jamovi won't calculate this, so you have to do it yourself, right? So once you have it, let's go back to Jamovi. Okay, share. Okay, so we need to get this. We can have the sample standard deviation equals square root of the sum of squares. So square deviation. Actually, we needed square deviation too, right? Let me. Okay, here it is. All right. We need, this is the sum of the square deviations right here. Okay, that's what we just. And so we do 3, 6, 5, 5, sorry, the squigglies, 0.62 divided by n, which is 16. Okay, then you take your calculator out and you calculate that, which is 36556.62 divided by 16 equals, and then we take the square root of the answer. And we can get it's 47.79, 47.799 here. Okay, and so then you plug that into the z scores. You find, for example, if we had your score being this. Okay, so if we want to get your z score, okay, we have to do your personal z. Let's pretend your score is 320, all of you guys. Okay. Minus, okay, the mean of x. So we have to go back up here and see grade 1 mean. So here we go, it's right here. Minus 269.48 divided by the sample standard deviation, which we calculated was 47.799. So if we calculate that, that's 320 minus 269.48. That's equal 50.52 on the top. So right now we have 50.52 on the numerator. That's a decimal point there. I can't really see it. Over 47.799. We can see that the score that this person with 320, his or her score is greater than the mean, which we already saw, right? 320 is greater than 269. So we know that the z-score has to be positive, right? So let's divide 50.52 divided by 47.799 equals 1.06. Z-score is 1.06, okay? And you could do that for all of them, right? Let's see, let me test and see if I actually did that correct. Because I actually calculated the z-score right here. With that 1 point, I think, what did I say? It was 1.56. Well, here's what we just calculated right here, but with different decimal points. So this would be the z-score. So it was right. You know, if your z-score is 40, you're wrong. Okay. Most of us are within 1 standard deviation of the mean. So if you got a huge one, so this one was a very low grade, but lower than that, you're not going to get, you know, it's wrong. So hopefully this helps, and I'll publish this right now so you guys can see it. And stop share.